The great doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Security Chief Vexer watched from his control room high above the main floor. His 4 eyes tracked every movement as the newest species prepared to enter their first official meeting. The humans had been approved for membership just 3 cycles ago, and today they would take their place among the 47 other races that made up the council. Bishar's antenna twitched with worry. In his 300 years as head of council security, he had never seen anything like this. Every species that joined the council followed the same ancient protocols. They brought their diplomats, their translators, and most importantly, their armed guards. It was a matter of respect and tradition that went back thousands of years. The Zephyrian looked down at his security screens. The insectoid warriors from his own people carried plasma rifles that could cut through steel. The crystal beings called Vortani had energy shields that could stop a missile. The reptilian Keth brought guards with molecular disruptors that could turn an enemy to dust in seconds. Even the peaceful plant-like Florians had their root warriors armed with thorn launchers. But the humans, Fishar's mandibles clicked in confusion. The humans were different. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked into the chamber first. She was a small woman by human standards with grey hair pulled back and wearing a simple dark blue uniform. Behind her came 3 other humans in similar clothes. They looked normal enough, even if their skin came in different shades and their hair varied from black to blonde. Then came their guards. 5 human males walked in formation behind the diplomatic team. They wore identical black uniforms, with no decorations except for small silver badges on their chests. They carried no visible weapons, no rifles, no energy shields, no molecular anything. Each guard had what looked like a simple communication device attached to their ear and a plain wooden stick-about arms, length hanging from their belt. Vexer leaned forward in his chair. His security scanners were running full sweeps on the human delegation. The results made no sense. The scanners found no energy weapons, no projectile firearms, no explosive devices, not even basic defensive gear. The wooden sticks appeared to be exactly that plain wood with no hidden technology. This cannot be correct, Vexer muttered to himself. He ran the scan again. Same results. On the main floor, the other delegations were noticing the same thing. Conversations stopped as species after species stared at the human guards. Some began whispering among themselves. A few looked insulted. High Commander Kareth of the Keth delegation leaned over to his aide. "Are they mocking us?" he asked in his deep, growly voice. "Do they think we are so weak that they need no weapons to defend against us?" The Vortani delegation's crystals chimed softly, which Vexer knew meant they were confused. The sound echoed through the chamber as more crystal beings picked up the harmonic. Even the usually calm Florians began rustling their leaves in what could only be described as nervous energy. Ambassador Chen seemed unaware of the stir her team was causing. She walked calmly to the human section of the great circular chamber and took her seat. Her guards moved with her, but not in the obvious protective formation that other species used. Instead, they spread out in what looked like random positions around the human area. Vexer watched this with growing alarm. Random positioning was dangerous. Any security expert knew that. Guards needed clear sight lines and overlapping fields of fire. But the human guards seemed to ignore every basic rule of protection duty. One guard stood near the main entrance, but with his back partially turned to it. Another positioned himself near a group of Zephyrian warriors, close enough that they could strike him before he could react. A third guard sat down in a chair. That put him below the eye level of most other species, making him an easy target. Fools. Vexer clicked. They will get their diplomat killed. But as he watched more carefully, VXAR began to notice strange details. The guard near the entrance might have his back turned, but his head moved in tiny increments and in the eye reflection of the polished wall behind him. He could see everything. The guard near the Zephyrian stood in a relaxed pose, but Vexer realized the position, put him within arm's reach of 3 different emergency alarm buttons. The sitting guard appeared vulnerable, but from his low angle. He had a clear view under tables and behind pillars where someone might hide. Still, none of this explained the lack of weapons. Council President Timar called the session to order. The ancient ethereal floated above the center of the chamber, his energy form pulsing with official authority. We welcome our newest members, the species known as humans, to this gathering of the Galactic Council. Polite sounds of approval came from most delegations. The Keith remained silent. Ambassador Chen, President Timar continued. Please address the council with your people's formal introduction. Sarah Chen stood up. As she did, Vexer noticed something that made his skin crawl. All 5 human guards turned their heads toward her at exactly the same moment. Not the obvious head turn of soldiers following orders, but a subtle, almost unconscious movement, like predators focusing on their pack leader. Honored Council, Ambassador Chen began. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity to join the galactic community. We come in peace seeking friendship and cooperation with all species. Her words were standard diplomatic language, translated perfectly by the Council's universal systems. But Vexer was not listening to her words. He was watching her guards. They stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind their backs, eyes forward. But their eyes never stopped moving. Tiny, almost invisible movements that tracked every delegate. Every movement in the chamber, every shadow that shifted. One guard's gaze swept across the upper galleries where Vexer sat. And for a moment, their eyes met through the transparent aluminum of the control room. The human guard's expression did not change. He did not nod or acknowledge Vexer in any way. But something in those calm measuring eyes made the Zephyrian security chief feel like he had just been catalogued, assessed, and filed away for future reference. We understand, Ambassador Chen continued. That trust must be earned. We hope our actions will speak louder than our words. As she spoke, more delegations began to notice the human guards. Conversations started in several different languages and communication methods. The KTH delegation's crystals were chiming more urgently now. Even some of the aquatic species in their mobile water tanks seemed agitated. High Commander Korath stood up, interrupting the human ambassador. A question if the council permits. President Thimar's energy form flickered with annoyance. But protocol allowed for interruptions during introductions. Speak, Commander Korath. The massive Cath pointed one clawed finger at the human guards. Why do your protectors carry no weapons? Do you mock our traditions? Do you consider us so beneath you that you need no defense? The chamber fell silent. This was exactly the kind of diplomatic crisis that could end a species membership. Before it truly began, Vexer leaned forward, wondering how the humans would respond. Ambassador Chen smiled. It was a small calm expression that somehow made Vexer even more nervous. Commander Korath, we carry no weapons because we believe the greatest weapon is the mind that needs no weapon. She gestured to her guards without looking at them. These men have trained their entire adult lives for one purpose: to protect diplomatic missions. They have studied every species in this chamber, learned your strengths and weaknesses, your fighting styles, and preferred tactics. They have memorized the layout of this building, identified every possible threat and every possible escape route. One of her guards stepped forward slightly. He was tall and lean with dark skin and completely calm eyes. If I may demonstrate, Commander Korath. The Cath warrior growled, but President Thiamar gave permission. The human guard looked around our chamber. In this room, there are 47 species represented. 12 of those species are primarily visual hunters. 21 rely mainly on hearing. 8 use chemical detection. 3 use electromagnetic sensing. The remaining 3 use methods we classify as exotic. He paused. There are currently 238 individuals in this chamber. 112 armed with energy weapons. 64 carry projectile weapons. 47 have blade weapons. 15 have what we consider exotic weapons. Bishar checked his own security readings. The numbers were exactly correct. The most dangerous individual in this room, the human, continued calmly, is the Vortani crystal singer in Section 7. Row 3. Her harmonic weapon could shatter the chamber supports and kill everyone herein. Approximately 4 seconds. The mentioned Vortani's crystals went completely silent. In shock. The most protected individual is High Commander Korath himself. His personal shield generator could withstand a direct hit from a ship's cannon. Korath's eyes narrowed. and the most vulnerable individual, the human guard said. His eyes finding. Vexer in the control room above is Security Chief Vexer, because his position of authority makes him a priority target, but his location provides only one escape route. The chamber was dead silent. Ambassador Chen nodded to her guard, who stepped back into position. We carry no weapons, Commander Korath, because we are the weapon, and we find that the best weapon is one. The 3 weeks had passed since humanity's first appearance at the Galactic Council. The initial shock of their weaponless guards had faded into the background noise of daily politics. Most species had decided the humans were either very brave or very stupid. A few thought they might be both. Security Chief Vexer had not forgotten. He found himself watching the human delegation more closely than any other group. Their guards continued to puzzle him. They stood in their same seemingly random positions, hands clasped behind their backs, wooden sticks hanging from their belts. But the more he observed them, the more he noticed patterns that should not exist. During the morning session on trade routes, one human guard had shifted position. Exactly 17 seconds before a Florian delegate stood up to speak. During the Atom discussion on mining rights, another guard had turned his head toward the entrance. 4 seconds before a late delegate arrived. It was as if they could predict movements before they happened. Today's session promised to be more challenging. The topic was territorial disputes in the outer spiral where human expansion had come close to established K colonies. High Commander Korath had requested special permission to bring additional guards, claiming the matter was too important for standard security measures. Vexeter watched the KTH delegation enter the chamber. Korath came first, his massive reptilian frame covered in ceremonial battle armor that gleamed under the chamber's lights. Behind him walked 12K warriors instead of the usual 6. Each warrior carried a molecular disruptor rifle and wore full combat gear. Their scaled faces showed barely controlled aggression. The message was clear. The Keith were preparing for more than just diplomatic discussion. Ambassador Chen entered with her usual calm confidence. Her 4 diplomatic staff looked slightly more tense than normal, but they maintained their professional composure. Behind them came the same 5 guards as always. Same black uniforms, same simple communication devices, same wooden sticks, no additional security. Despite the Keith's obvious preparations for confrontation. As the human guards took their positions, Vexer noticed something different in their movements. It was subtle, so small that most beings would miss it entirely. But each guard's steps were slightly shorter today. Their breathing was deeper. Their eyes moved in quicker sweeps across the chamber. They knew something was going to happen. Hi, Commander Korath wasted no time with diplomatic pleasantries. As soon as President Thiamar called the session to order, the Keith leader stood and activated a holographic display showing star charts of the disputed region. The Keith hegemony has maintained colonies in these systems for over 2,000 years. Korath announced, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. Now humans dare to claim planets that rightfully belong to us. Ambassador Chen remained seated as she responded. Commander Korath, the systems in question contain planets suitable for human colonization that show no signs of current Keth presence. Her surveys found abandoned mining equipment but no active colonies. Abandoned. Korath's roar made several smaller species flinch. Those are sacred sites, ancestral hunting grounds. No human has the right to set foot on soil blessed by Keith blood. The tension in the chamber jumped. Immediately. This was beyond normal diplomatic disagreement. Korath was invoking religious law, which made compromise nearly impossible. We had no knowledge of any sacred significance, Ambassador Chen replied calmly. If you can provide documentation of religious sites, we can certainly discuss relocation of our settlements. Documentation? Korath slammed his clawed hand on his desk, leaving deep gouges in the metal surface. You demand documentation of faith, of ancestral rites that existed before your species learned to make fire. Other delegations began shifting nervously. The Vortani crystals started humming in harmonics that suggested anxiety. Several aquatic species retreated deeper into their mobile tanks. This was escalating beyond normal council procedures. Bishar leaned forward in his control room. His security protocols were clear. If violence seemed likely, he was authorized to flood the chamber with sleep gas and remove all weapons. But how could he remove weapons from beings who apparently carried none? As Korath continued his angry speech, Vexa noticed the human guards had made tiny adjustments to their positions. Nothing obvious, but each had shifted maybe half a step. The one near the main entrance now stood, where he could see both the entrance and the emergency exits. The guard closest to the Cath delegation had moved slightly behind a support pillar that would provide cover from energy weapons. Most interesting was the guard who had been sitting. He was no longer in his chair, but standing near what looked like a decorative plant. Vexita realized it was not decorative at all, but a Florian observer whose root system extended throughout that section of the chamber. If trouble started, that guard could communicate directly with the Florian neural network. "Your people are thieves and cowards," Kor was saying, his voice getting louder with each word. "You sneak into our territory like parasites, then hide behind council law when challenged." Ambassador Chen's expression never changed, but Vexa saw one of her guards touch his communication device. Just a brief contact, barely a second, but immediately all 5 guards shifted their weight forward onto the balls of their feet. They were preparing for action. "Commander Korath," Ambassador Chen said, "personal insults will not resolve this dispute. Perhaps we could arrange for a joint archaeological survey to identify any sites of religious significance." Archaeological survey. Korath laughed, a harsh sound that made his warriors bare their teeth in approval. "You think KTH's sacred sites need human approval? You think your soft hands can touch what our ancestors made holy?" He gestured to his warriors. "Show these humans what Keth strength looks like. Show them why they should fear to steal from us." The 12-kilogram guards moved as one. They stepped forward into the center aisle. Molecular disruptor rifles held across their chests in what any military expert would recognize as a ready position. Not quite aimed, but close enough to be threatening. The chamber fell silent except for nervous breathing and the Vortani crystal's anxious chiming. Other species guards reacted immediately. The Zepyrian warriors raised their plasma rifles. The crystal beings activated their energy shields. Even the peaceful Florian extended defensive thorns from their arms. But the human guards did not move at all. Beakstar stared at his screens in disbelief. Every other security force in the chamber was preparing for battle, and the humans stood perfectly still with their hands clasped behind their backs. They looked completely unconcerned, as if 12 heavily armed warriors were not performing an obvious threat display right in front of them. The KE warriors began their traditional war dance. It was an ancient ritual meant to intimidate enemies before battle. They moved in synchronized steps, spinning their weapons in complex patterns while chanting in their native language. The meaning was clear to everyone present. This was what happened to those who crossed the KH hegemony. The display was impressive and terrifying. The warriors were clearly experts, their weapons spinning and flashing in perfect coordination. Several delegates pushed back from their desks trying to get farther from the potential violence. But the human guards still did not react. Kor noticed this, too, his eyes fixed on the nearest human guard, a man with pale skin and light brown hair who stood less than 3 m from the dancing warriors. The guard was watching the display, but his expression showed no fear, no concern, not even interest. He looked like someone watching a mildly boring performance. "You," Korath shouted over the war chant, "human, are you not impressed by Keth might? Do you not fear our warriors?" The human guard turned his head toward Korath. His movement was slow and deliberate, like someone who had just been asked a question during a lecture. "No, sir," the guard replied calmly. "Should I be?" The simple question hung in the air. The KTH warriors faltered slightly in their dance, confused by the response. Kor's eyes blazed with fury. "Should you be? Should you be?" He gestured wildly at his warriors. "These are the finest fighters in the galaxy. Each one could defeat 10 of your kind." The human guard nodded politely.